All right, what's up, everybody? Another episode of Four Good Brothers Changing the Narrative. We want to pick back up from where we left off last week, so this will be part 2 of What's My Value. That series started as more of a global experience and more of a whole experience of what our value is and what that means for us. But today, it's going to get a little more personal when we talk about these questions and just setting a framework, man. We hope that what we say as men with 4 different perspectives, what we say creates a safe space for men to have these type of transparent conversations, and also provide some perspective on manship and black men, because we don't agree all the time, but there's also a way to disagree and have that conversation. You never learn and grow from agreeing all the time, but also like the growth comes into crisis situations, right? So don't avoid tough conversations, don't avoid crisis situations, because it's how we all grow. So before we get into the meat of our conversation, I want to do some quick intros. I'm mediating today. Kevin Esquire, if you're feeling fancy. We got Stefan from the block, not J-Lo.
I don't have an Esquire behind my name.
You know, I'll sir you in and knight you, and then you can have it behind your name. Deacon, pastor, minister, artist.
Yes.
LaBelle Aloysius.
Bless you. Willis.
Aloysius isn't really in there, so don't try to Google.
But y'all can find me on Spotify and Apple Music and all digital media outlets. My project will be out by the time this comes out. It's called You Changed My Life, so go check it out. God bless you and thank you for your support.
Very shameful plug. Usually we say shameless plug, but that was bad. That was shameful. But so thank you.
You're welcome.
The visionary, the man, the myth, the legend, Freddie J, super multifaceted, one of the most talented people I know. Special shout out to our guy Dante Lucky Few Apparel. You will see a lot more of that on the show. LuckyFew.com. If you see anything that someone has on, the big LF, LUCKIE.com.
We got what we got.
See how I did that?
See
how I did that?
Shop too, because he's a sponsor.
That's true. Also, another special shout out to my boy Vernon Jackson, owner of Noble Barbershop, NobleBB.com. I'm sure at some point he'll be a special guest, maybe soon. Hint, hint. So be on the lookout for that. So I'm gonna get us into this meaty conversation. And we talked about what's my value last week, and what that means as a man, what that means as a black man, what that means for other people. So today it's a little more specific, and we're gonna get right into it. So the question I pose to the group is, what's a time that you felt the least valued and why? Because I think it's important for us to ask why questions. So it's not just enough to answer a question, but why, what in that specific situation made us feel the least valued. So I'm gonna open it up, and I'm gonna kick it to my left to Stefan first.
That was sort of a loaded question when I sat back and I thought about it. And I had 2 experiences. The first one, I think I was too young to even realize that I was being devalued in the point that it happened. And then the second example I'll give you, I was much older, so I understood it. So my first example was, as a child, I came from a single parent household, but my dad went and had another family, so I got stepbrothers and stepsisters. And at one point, we was having a real poignant conversation, and I had to respect his honesty, but he came out flat out and told me that he was more of a father to my step siblings, which are not his biologically, but that's the household that he was in, than he was to me. So it was sort of in the moment, I was just kind of like, I don't want to say that well, I do can say that at times, especially being younger, I can be kind of arrogant. I can just kind of be, as being the only child, you kind of build up a bravado and you're taking care of yourself, so you kind of hear this, and it's just kind of like, you know what, so what? But then when that question came up, I was like, that's probably the easiest way for me to think that someone could devalue you, because that's a choice that you're making. Because it was, I think at that time, maybe they were staying in Avondale, and I had already started making my transition with my mom to the suburbs, so I'm either in North College Hill or Fairfield at the time. That's not a far commute. Living in Cincinnati, you talking 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
For me, for somebody to make that assumption, that's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're choosing to value this situation more than that one. So it was one of them things that really I didn't really think about it too much. It stuck in the back of my mind, but when I was reading the question from the outline last week, I thought about it, like, where can you really devalue, can kind of feel devalued in it? Where can that come from? The second thing was more of as an adult, where I had to have a conversation with somebody where I was doing stuff or lending money and all this other type of stuff, but I knew that this person I was lending money to or giving stuff to was taking their time or wasn't paying me back, but then they was borrowing it from you too, and it was automatic.
Multiple banks.
But this one was automatic, you know, and I've had, and it's almost to me it was a devaluing, but to them it wasn't a devaluing just off of, and I had somebody tell, you know, me and my wife, like, you got a bunch of different people you can come to, why you always asking us for stuff? And her answer was, because y'all got it.
Wow.
Once again, for me, my first thought process is that I can respect your honesty. But then it's just like, so you devaluing the work and the effort and what I gotta do to get to where I'm at, and everybody else, you valuing to me where they're at and kind of what's going on. So those were, you know, it was kind of a childhood example, which has stuck with me because I had that thing in my mind, you know. So kind of what Fred was saying in the previous episode, you know, when you didn't show up to my events, you know, but then I go somewhere else, and you might be at one of my step sibling events.
Yeah.
Fresh from work, that it shows you. For me, it was more showing and telling.
So for you, that childhood experience was like you not feeling valued as a son.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was. There was no question in where that goes. My thing is how I show value. You can't really show me value with your words. It's with your actions. That's where the value comes. Because you'll catch me. I'll say this all the time: is that you can say anything out your mouth. It tainted me to the point where I have an issue with the phrase "I love you" doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, and we've mentioned that before.
Right. And so that's where it comes from, because people can tell you I care about you, I support you, but do you show up? And then how do you show up? Step one in showing anybody that you value them is going to be with your time, because your time is the only thing that you really can't get back.
Yeah, you can make 1,000, lose 1,000, get it back. Time is the only valuable resource that you don't get back, and I think that's important. I think that's something that we need to highlight even more in all situations, right? Yeah. So being devalued as a, or not feeling the value as a son, I think that's something that we can all like relate to, and also not feeling valued for the good works. So someone like you out of the kindness of your heart, you and your partner like loaning money to somebody, but then it becomes an expectation. So even though that's part of who you are and having that generosity, after a while when it becomes an expectation, now you're not appreciative and you're devaluing what's important to you.
Yeah,
So,
and I think
especially with money.
I think for me it was more because I'm real big on it's a family, it's a community, and if somebody is down, you know, if Lavelle is down for a while, we all brothers. If Fred got him this week, you got him the following week. I'm one of them people where it's my week. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna keep the circle going because we all supposed to be a community and stuff. But then if he just like, well, I think you in a better wait, hold on. Wait, what do they got? So realistically, you valuing what they got going on, what they could be doing with their resources more than what I could be doing with mine,
Yeah.
because of how you feel they could be doing stuff.
Yeah, I think you bring up another interesting cultural experience. Then I'll kick it over. You mentioned like, oh, like when I do things for family, then you went automatically into like, yeah, look, Ellis, bro, I got you this week. I think that because of certain cultural and socioeconomic standards, black people view their friendships as family versus their actual family.
Say it one more time, because I'm dealing with that right now.
I would be more inclined to let a friend borrow a large lump sum of money than I would a family member. And I think that that's something, and I won't railroad this because that's something that we can talk about.
That's oh yeah.
Yeah, that's another
Yeah.
thing. LaVille, I'm gonna kick it to you while we cooking with grease.
Man,
Cooking with
'cause I
grease.
wanna say
Cooking
something.
with fire.
Yeah.
Cooking with grease.
It's on
Is
grease.
it Greece?
Yeah,
Amen.
Cisco.
I think the biggest one for me, and I've had a few moments in my life, but I think the biggest one for me was I got pulled over, and I fit the description of what that officer said. And I remember because I was on my way to church, and he pulled me over and told me to get out the car, and he searched me, called me every kind of name but my name. And it got me to a point to where I didn't feel like a man at all. I feel nothing. I was so mortified, embarrassed, horrified, and devalued as a man, as a black man, as just a human being. And it still triggers and comes up in my mind every now and then. And this was maybe 4 years ago, maybe 5.
I remember that. I remember you called me that day.
Because, and I haven't told that many people either. I told you and maybe a few others. But then, and I think that's part of it too, because a lot of times we don't want to talk about some of the things that's happened to us. Because that makes us also feel devalued if I say something. And, I shared it with you and a few others, but yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I honestly anticipated this conversation going a totally different route when people talked about, I know one of us will get there, when we talk about like when we felt the less valued. And I don't think that people who have a level of power understand the power that they have. So the experience you had with a police officer or law enforcement, those should always be positive experiences, protect and serve. We know that looks different for people of color, but also that one experience changed you, changed what you think about people of authority. It changed what you feel your value is as a black man in America. And I would love for, if there's anybody in law enforcement watching or listening, to please reach out and give some perspective and join the show at some point to talk to people about their rights as people and the human side of being a law enforcement officer. Because people being police officers are just like they're people. You have bad people just like you have bad police officers. So it's not an indictment on that community, but that experience is definitely something that makes you feel like less valued as a man and as a black man.
Absolutely, and like you said, I'm not one of those people where just because I've had one bad experience, the whole police force or the whole firefighter academy is all bad.
How?
But I'm just saying.
Firefighter academy.
I mean, it might be some of them too. I don't know, but I think it's just because growing up, at least in our families, the talking like Caucasian is like the birds and bees. But our conversation is, okay, this is what happens. If you ever get pulled over, this is what you need. Make sure both hands is on the wheel. Don't say nothing. Roll down all the windows, all that stuff. And I had that talk, and I think sometimes, even though we've already known that, and I had that talk a long time ago with my mom telling me this stuff, and we're aware of it, it still doesn't hit you until it actually happens to you, even though you know folks and we've seen it. But once it really happens to you and they show you and degrade you like that, because I've been pulled over before and I've had okay experiences. But this one, yeah, and it just, yeah, it put me in a very, very dark place for a while.
Yeah, rightfully so.
So, but I think that was probably the biggest moment for me in that piece.
Fred J, what you got?
I've had several areas in my life. I've talked about it on previous pod, about my father. So I line up with Stefan in that area.
And go back and watch that if you haven't seen it. It was pretty powerful about that. We need to have a separate conversation about like father-son dynamic, especially in a black community. So
I felt devalued in the sense of striving to be an artist in gospel music with a group that I founded. It's probably the first time that I'm saying this. Well, I think I've said it to a member or members of the group. But it hurt to, another instance, I'll go through that quick, but for some reason, man, I know this is attached to the gift of music. It really hurt to come up in such a way where most people wouldn't identify you, that God would never give me the opportunity of a visionary, to be a person that would be the person he would use to form Voltron, shall I say. And my own mistake is that I didn't have a leader, I didn't have a mentor, in a sense, who could constantly I could have checks and balances with. Like my spiritual father, he left, like he moved out of town. It's not nothing against him. He moved, better living situation and, cooking. He's a chef. Shout out to Pop Ward, Elder Ward. And so he left. I always had my Aunt Cherie, who I came up in Vessels, True Praise Ministries, whom I absolutely love. But from Mel's perspective, I didn't have that person who could give me checks and balances, and it could have been, just being young, growing, and not really, again, that dynamic of my father not being there, and then not really wanting to trust another man per se, or whatever vibe I gave off, they made those that were in our city at the time. Like, it's been great men that I, that I look to and like, man, they were giants in gospel music, you know what I mean? But just my own personal growing and weird transitions, whether it was arrogant, cockiness, attitude, anger, all that infused into one thing, it could have been why they never wanted to put their hand on me, in the sense of showing me, and I think it really hurt. Like, so I wasn't a true leader inside of the unit that God told me to put together of Call to Worship. So my assumption was, God gave me the vision, but through all of us as a unit, we formulate what this is supposed to look like. But I was the oldest though, so I always had that aura about myself, being the older guy, the older brother. I've always been wanting to be a protector, you know. But somehow vision from other members in the group was miscued about me.
So I want to pause you right there because I really want you to get into this for the sake of not just for you, but for the people watching that are experiencing something similar in leadership, and how leadership can be devalued, how gifts can be devalued. Do you feel like you were devalued more so like your gifts being devalued, or do you feel like you were more devalued as a man, or was it both?
Both.
And say more about that too.
In my gift, I would say more in the sense of the ability. Like, you know, I'm 42 now, and turning 43 is October. Man, I've been beating on drums and banging on keyboards and singing and writing songs, according to my granny, since I was about 5, 6. You know, I've never been a person to be arrogant. Some people may say that I am, but I'm a person who likes to tell a fact. You know, the group doesn't start without me. That's a fact. It's not, you know, it's not me being arrogant. It just doesn't happen. But I felt devalued in the sense of outside of the ability, like, you know, somebody could box you in, like for instance, Lavelle's a singer, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody may say they hear Lavelle sing a particular style of song, and they're like, man, they bring that up like that's his style. But all the while, he's the polar opposite of that. He just has the ability to be versatile in his singing, you know what I mean? Like, and I say that in the sense of like, people like what they like, you know? But when you get boxed in, for me, that may not be big to other people, but for me, to be boxed in it's a devaluing of me, because it's like, this is all you think that I do.
And this is all you think it be.
Yeah. And not all the times is it that, you know. Some people just don't know how to word what they feel, or maybe, I don't know. So, you know, it was that, or, you know, to the point that certain group members, family would be like, oh, my son started a group. And they would publicly say it, and I'm like, no, that's not what happened. Yeah. Your son didn't start this group. I did. But it was a sense I get of trying to support their son, you know what I mean? But it was like, at the same time, a parent will always love their child, but it's like, you gotta look at the unit though. Love your child, but also love the entire unit for what it is. Each person inside of that group, inside of Call to Worship. And I'm saying that, and my hope is, even in bringing that up, bringing this up now, that when they watch it, each individual person, and not only them, but their family, you hear directly from my mouth, the assembly of that unit. I was just the person who was supposed to put the unit together. God ultimately put that unit together. Each man in that group is a star within itself. That is God's honest truth. I've always felt that. I have never strayed away from that. I have never believed that each one of those guys were what they are, what they can be. And I think a lot of times that was looked past, or how I handled things, or how I said things, because again, people are surface level, they don't have conversation. They take it and they run with it. And so that down at the breakdown of the unit. But that's that. The other part that I would say, now I'm gonna leave that alone.
No, you're not, because I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get there. Because I think that. So before I force Fred to deep dive into that, again, it's a safe space. You know, we here.
Yeah, definitely.
I think what you talked about, and this is something we'll talk about. We'll tease it up for another pod too. Is like the value of leadership and what leadership is. Because there's a difference between being somebody's boss and being a leader.
Yeah.
Leaders do what's right. Bosses and supervisors do the right thing. When I say do the right thing, it's something about the book. This person is late. This happened to this person. There's this amount of chances. Then you terminate that person. The leadership aspect of it is the human-centered piece. Is like, what's going on in your life? Where this is happening consistently? How can I support and help? And I think what you mentioned is like there's a balance between like when we win, it's us. If we lose, it's I. But also a separate conversation about the negative connotation of arrogance. Because a lot of people view arrogance as a bad or negative thing. But I think there is a level of extreme confidence that you should have so that your value isn't lowered by others. I'm saying, like, if it's, hey, I was the visionary for this, then that is what it is. Unless it's something that's not factual, you can't be pissed. You know what I'm saying? You just embrace that. But I think that's a separate conversation too. And something that I want to challenge the group on before we go to another deeper question in regards to value. I'm really surprised that no one said relationship or relationships or marriage or a friendship. And so y'all, I ain't gonna lie, y'all threw me out. I didn't know if I thought that's where we was gonna sit. No, I feel like if you ask most people, the number one thing they'll say when they felt the least value is in a relationship or marriage.
I think it's I would say for me, I can't speak for Stefan.
Like at a very deep hurt level.
It's
you know what I'm saying?
Like, I would say for you, honestly, in my life, it's there. It's definitely there. But I think,
is it a but or is it an and? Because but dismisses everything you just said. It's like saying I'm hurt, but
yeah.
So is it like
when
that?
When I say but, I don't care no more, man. I really don't. Like I'm at the point where I am now having to move to a place where I have to just remove it, because what I'm expecting for the value to come, not for relationships to come back, but the value, just the maturity of the say.
So like, the not caring piece is because you now know more of your value.
Yeah, it's like it's never coming.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's a pattern of things that continually happen. And you're like, instead of me getting mad and blowing up, and so when the question is asked, I'm pretty sure Stefan, you, Lavelle, we could all be like, instantly, this is the first thing that came. But I'm like, this is normal. Like, let me talk about something else, because those other people, because for me, each one of those things that I felt devalued, they all have a connection. It is something that's also deeply rooted inside of me. So because of that, I've continued to work on that. So when we're talking about
piece of the process,
you know what I'm saying? It's like for every action there's a reaction. So therefore, regardless, like I said, like Stefan started off, my story on another pod, like I said, you guys will be able, when it comes, you watch it. My devaluing initially from my relationship, lack thereof, with my father, that carried over to everything else, and I was able, even if it didn't match up to me, it felt like residue, and I could look at it and be like, okay, I got some reservations.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's the beauty of these conversations, though, that men aren't having, because it's like you get to the root of what some of the actual challenges are. If me and Stefan don't know each other, I bump into him into a club. What you see is him being angry. What he really feels is that he feels disrespected. I didn't acknowledge his space. Hey, bro, my bad. So I think talking through it and getting to the root of it is the beauty of some of these conversations. Because I mean, and this may be like a construct thing, but that's something that I really, really like applaud women for. Sitting down and like having some of those conversations amongst themselves, like, hey girl, this is what I want. This is my women night voice. Hey girl, this what, you know what I'm saying, what's going on, like, woo. Men, and I'm guilty of it. Hey bro, what's going on? No, I'm good. When on the inside, you're like dying inside and it's festering. So I really appreciate us having the ability to have this platform to have those type of conversations.
Well, I want to piggyback off what you said and then go somewhere else. I think the difference between men and women is that we don't have that conversation until you already hit the wall.
Yeah.
Or you so close to hitting the wall.
The shit hitting the fan, and now you want to talk. Yeah.
It's almost too late. Women, in some cases, with close girlfriends, they can have that conversation daily.
Mm-hmm.
right.
They can almost have that. You explain to your girlfriend, some females, what happened at work every single day. You know, I know some of my wife's closest friends because I come in the house and they on the phone. It's just you cannot avoid it.
Yeah.
We don't have those same type of relationships. Most men don't have those same type of relationships.
Is it that we don't have those relationships, or we not taught to communicate in that way?
Well, that's where I was going. You may have that conversation in the barbershop. So depending on how your barbershop structure is, how long you feel like being in the barbershop, because the thing you got to catch is that, especially back in the day, it was more prevalent. You find some guys that spent their whole Saturday in the barbershop.
Yeah, they ain't even getting a cut.
They ain't even getting it, but he there, giving game and soaking up game.
Yeah.
Throughout the day. So that was that mechanism. But then you're talking once a week when you look at the other gender, and it can be, like I said before, it can be daily.
Mm-hmm.
And you really get a bunch of support around you once, you know, it's like you said, proverbial shit has hit the fan.
Yeah.
Now everybody is kind of coming in. The other part, which you said way too good, and I am probably the worst person for this when it comes to relationships, because the God honest truth, I've had 2 girlfriends in my entire life, and I married one of them, and the other one was in high school. So I was gonna say, kind of segueing into when have you devalued people, I was the king of devaluing women.
Ooh, hold on to that. Hold on to that. Because I'm coming right back your way. I'm coming your way. Hold on to it. Closing remarks before we hit that, because that's where we going next. Closing remarks on that piece before we hit Stefan's point.
I think, well, just to go into that other question you said about relationships and marriage, I'm with Stefan. I've only had maybe true relationships, maybe 3.
About this for a long
I did 3. 3. And I got an old soul. So, you know, I had a girl, but I was already thinking, like, oh, I'm about to marry this girl. So I took my relationships very serious, though. But I say that to say, I think the reason why marriages and relationships probably are the number one piece or part where somebody can devalue is because they know that person so very well. And they know what triggers them. They know what turns them on and turns them off. And they know every inch, which is why, you know, before you get to that relationship with that mother and son or that father and daughter, you know what you can say that will rip them to shreds. And it hurts even more because it's the person you love. It's a person you trust. It's a person that you care for. And you're like, damn, why are they saying this about me?
Yeah, I've always been taught that the people that you love the most will hurt you the most because of the expectation.
Because of that. I'll tell you, my wife said something to me when we first got married, and it...
She can't make you upset. She's so nice.
Right. My wife is next to Mother Teresa. But she said something to me when we first got married, and I ain't gonna lie, I gave her the look of like Ike Turner. I've never put my hands on a female. I've never done it, and I never will. But I told her, because it took me, like, you know, a lot of times, like we just said, men fester this stuff up. And I am still working on this to this day. When I get angry and upset at something, I typically hold on to it for a while, where next thing you know, I got blood pressure, high blood pressure, and I'm stressed and all of this stuff. And my wife cannot stand when there's an issue between us, especially if we don't talk about it that same day. And now through the years since we've been married, she knows if I'm upset, she knows now I got to give him his space. But she also has the expectancy that I'm going to come back to that conversation after she has respectfully given me my space.
Right.
So, and I finally told her after a few days, you cannot say something like this to me because this is why I feel the way about this when you said this comment. And I think this is where most relationships mess up, is my wife honored that, respected that, and it has never came back up, even if we have had disagreements so far. Because if somebody has a disagreement, they know that all they got to do is say that again. But because of the love and the respect and the value that she sees in me, she knows I will never do that again to my husband, and vice versa. So that's my little closing remark when it came to that marriage relationship.
Got you, because Stefan kicked us off without knowing he was kicking us off.
I know I was kicking us
Oh, no, they didn't know. All right. So this is where everybody's kind of, people listening, this means you getting closer to the speaker. The women that's watching, you getting closer to your phone because you're like, he said what? I know all women don't sound like that, y'all. That's just my, it's a girl night voice. I mean, like, but anyway, so like, I want us now, because it's important for us to be transparent and acknowledging our part. When have you devalued someone? And what have you learned from that?
When you say, because we've beaten around the bush, when you say devalue somebody, you saying when have we as men devalued women? So let's.
It could be a friendship, some type of ship.
Okay.
USSR.
So that's where he being politically correct, even though he got his pink shirt on today. So we
real men wear pink. Real men wear pink.
I got plenty of pink shirts.
I'm coming from masculinity.
Maybe next week
I'll
go full camera next week.
No, don't do that.
He said something about, never mind.
Y'all know I got a pink suit.
That's another level.
No, don't do that.
Your polo suit.
Don't do that.
But my whole thing is I think, and when I look back on retrospect, a lot of the interactions, and I have to call them interactions because when I look at back and I'm transparent, like I've only had 2 relationships. Does that mean I've only been involved with 2 women? No. Does that mean I've only had relations with 2 women? No. But to really take that step and be serious as far as relationships, something I would say relationship, where you could make it to grandma's house. My wife's the only female I ever brought into my grandmother's house. To be able to take it that far, it's been like 2. And I think those are the only 2 that ever actually even met my grandmother, 2. And like I'm saying, one of them was all the way back in high school. So when I look back at all the other women that I've dealt with, my wife get mad at me and tell me if I try to act humble, and she's like, you want to say when I throw them little jabs, it was this thing where I even told her, a female told me she loved me before, my response was thank you.
I mean, but that's
Yeah,
like,
no, that's-
I mean,
that's
yeah,
your truth.
if you don't want to be transparent, don't.
But what people don't understand was that came from being out, being in high school, back in the day, being in Madison Bowl, and watching two girls go crazy over my boy, and I'm like, what is you doing? He telling both of them you love. I'm not going. My concept was you're not busting my windows out. You're not flattening my tires. We're not
Sugar
going
in
through,
a tank.
We're not going through all this stuff based off of a false perception
Yeah.
that I'm giving you.
Because if you don't love somebody, why should you even paint that picture? Or why would you even say it verbally? That's good.
Well,
And
you
love is
got-
action.
You gotta keep everything real. You know, it's mostly 80s babies in this room.
Because somebody told them they love them. Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
that was the easy. That was one of the easiest ways. was that?
And women fed into it, it's like, tell me you love me first.
Okay, that's all I gotta
A
do.
lot of us wouldn't be here.
Right. That's all I
That
have
they
to do.
do it. Yeah.
But then as you evolve and you start to get older, and it's just like, would I want somebody to do this to my daughter, even though I don't have one? You know, once you turn, when you're in a single parent household, and you get to a certain age, you feeling yourself, you smelling yourself. What would you do if you found out a man was doing this to your mom? Y'all would end up, you know, stuff. At a teenage age, is we about to jump, oh boy, you know, that type of thing happens. But now in retrospect, I was devaluing people's feelings. You know, what could that have done to their self-esteem in that situation?
Because somewhere, somebody's still holding on to that.
Oh,
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
I had a conversation. This is, I mean, going all the way back to middle school because I was cool with people. I was probably in college, and two girls. One, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't even know. I was just boredom. And her friend was like, you know, you really hurt her. I'm like, this is 6 years later, man. I was a kid, but from that same thing, people hold on to that whole thing.
Yeah, man, words have power.
Right. And especially when, and that's a whole nother show, but words have power.
For sure.
I believe and I don't believe words have power.
I respectfully disagree, and when we talk about that, I'm gonna show you why.
There we go.
I'm gonna show you why.
Because it kind of ties in.
Don't go there yet, because I'm gonna sidetrack us. But I'm gonna show you why.
But here's my thing, and we can tie into that later. But when I say, it's kind of my closing when I say that words don't have power, and allowing someone else to devalue you, part of that is your choice. Because I've been in situations where I wanted to pursue somebody or, you know, get to know them in a certain type of way and been shot down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I didn't let you devalue me the way you was devaluing other people. A lot of times it kind of worked in my favor because I was the type of person to say, I don't wear Atkins, you don't need to worry about it.
So what I'll say to that, without getting too deep, and then I'll kick it to Lavelle, is that I disagree with that because words have power at a molecular level. It's beyond just your strength coming from your willpower, which isn't quantifiable, and it may be neurological, like having a resilience and strength. But words have power at a molecular level, at a scientific level. Words do something to you physically and can turn into self-fulfilling prophecy. How many kids, how many of our kids, and I say our kids, because they all are our kids, whether they are not biologically alive, because they're our future. How many of our kids are misguided and doing what they do based on somebody telling them that they wasn't gonna be nothing, they not gonna make it, they not gonna be shit. So now that has manifested and has shown you, and there are studies that show, like there's a Dr. Emoto study where you speak positive affirmation over a water molecule and a plant and the net, like there's a distinguishable physical difference. So there has to be something to that, where those words, even though there's a level of willpower, have some type of power at a very like cellular structural level. Has to be.
Real quick, and then we're gonna move on. This is food for thought for everyone to think about for the next podcast or whenever we hit the subject.
Mm-hmm.
What about the person who overcomes because of you told me these things? Because you told me I was never gonna be nothing. Because you told me I wasn't gonna never make it out of this neighborhood. Because you told me I can never afford this house. Because you told me I can never do this. Now I've excelled past that, and people can say they use that for their motivation because you told me that I was never going to do it. And I agree with you, because you can tell two different people and they can take it in two different directions. But then that's where part of it comes into when I'm big on looking back at yourself, and then what are you going to do with this? Are you going to believe? And this is something that we have. I agree with you, because we got to teach the kids. Because I'm agreeing with you, but I'm disagreeing with you, because you also have to teach the kid because we're going to say that's a lie. When someone tells you you ain't nothing, you ain't never going to be nothing, I think most of us can agree that's a lie. When someone tells you that, that's a lie. So then it goes to that person. How long are you going to believe the lie that someone's telling you about yourself? Even though they're telling it to you about you, how long are you going to believe that?
I think the reality would show that it's twofold. There's both what you're saying. Ultimately, though, if you really think about it, words, when we say words have power, in the sense of him saying that they don't, but then he says, well, people acting on the fact that I was able to do this because you said that I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I think that's also a symbol of saying that words have power.
Right.
Because it motivated. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, you told me I wasn't going to be shit. So, okay, cool. Here we go.
And then last thing to that point too is like, there is, and this is just being real, and this is okay. There's a level of resiliency and strength that not all people have.
Yes.
Some people ain't built for that. And that's all right. That's not shade. It's just one of those things. It is what it is. Everybody ain't built the same.
I ain't gonna jump in.
Everybody ain't built the same. As far as like a level of resiliency, there's some things that happen to people that they take their own lives for. On top of mental behavioral health, that other people have experienced similar situations, and because they have built up to that point, they have the wherewithal to either seek help and or strive through it. You got something on that everybody ain't built like that piece. I know.
Nah, I just want to say this so we can move forward. In that, I don't necessarily think that to say that everybody's not built like that. It's not necessarily. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that everyone has the same ability to do what the next man can. It's just based on the environment, the community that person derives from, and has that piece been tapped into or deposited, shall I say, into that person. Like, Lavelle's my boy, my brother, but I gotta say, I don't know where Lavelle grew up at. I don't know that about him. I said, oh, well, I know Kev came out of Avondale. Stefan came out of Avondale.
Came out of Bryce Hill.
Okay, there you go. So,
Bryce Hill?
So
I'm pretty sure
That's not what they did. I have no idea, but
but again, now we're looking at that environment of what we know Bryce Hill to be.
They called it Crack Hill. So.
But at the same time,
a lot of that.
depending on, so okay, say a person who commits suicide, right? We'd be like, oh man, they didn't have the ability. No, they did. It's a possible chance.
And they may not have had the resources.
Yeah, they just didn't have the resources, or the community that they come from. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody spoke that into them. Like, for instance, my grandfather was big on, you know, as a man, you know, if you say you're gonna do something, do it. If you say you're not gonna do it, you know, shake a man's hand, look him in the eye. Like, establish the fact that I'm a man. I don't care if I'm 12 and you 30, 40. When I shake your hand, I'm looking you straight in your face, because I may be a boy right now, but naturally I'm a man by genitalia, all those kind of things. So when I look at any kind of man, I'm like, because I want it to be established. Even at 12, you can't push me. You can't push me around. That's not gonna happen. And I've been a stickler. You could go talk to my mom, my grandmother out there present day, and they will tell you that I have stood face to face with grown men at 12, 13
first
years
fight
old.
was with a
Like,
man.
let me tell you something, bro. You're not my father, and you're not my papa or my granddaddy. You can't talk to me like that. That's not gonna happen.
But that comes back to what we're talking about. That's
Final
self. That's self
On that.
value. That's self value. What he's talking about is self value. I respect myself enough that I'm letting you know that whatever we're talking about, whatever we're agreeing on,
Yeah.
especially when you lay your hand out and you shake somebody's hand and you look at them in their eyes, even if they try not to look at you in your eyes. Because part of that also, for me, is a sign of power, which comes back to self-value. Because you can't operate in power without having self-value. You gotta guess what I said. I said you can't operate in power without having self-value. I didn't say you couldn't have power and not have self-value because it's two different things. So that's one of the things that you really got to look at, and it's always for me is always going to come back to self, because the only thing you can control is yourself.
That's right.
Now, when you go to mental health and your mind, especially because we talk about suicide, we got to be real frank on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
If your mind is not all the way there, you need to seek help. So once you seek that help, they can get you back to the place where you can control your mind.
And some people just aren't aware that they even need the help.
Right.
So you have that back to community. You need that community to be around. Hey, because I love you, this is what the conversation we need to have.
Right.
Lavelle, you've been quiet for a minute, so I pose that same question. When have you, and I'm really curious to see what this is going to look like. When have you devalued someone, and what did that look like for you?
You know, I had to think real long and hard on this because I don't know if I have ever done it. And then I was like, actually, I have. And I apologize to this person. And it was, and I'm gonna tell you why too. I also grew up in a single parent household, where my mom was the mom and dad and everything else in between. Shout out to Mama, rest in heaven. But I also grew up with all women. I'm the only boy. 2 sisters. My mama had 3 sisters. Now she had 3 brothers too, but I didn't see them that much. So, and she talked to her sisters every single day. Growing up in church, she was always just close to the ladies in the church. So I grew up with all women. So I kind of knew the trigger points already in women. There was a young lady that I was dating, and this was one of the 3 relationships I had, and she was labeled as something other than her name.
Oh,
That and everything else in between.
okay. I just wanted to make sure we was clear.
Yes, yes.
A lot of sense, friend.
And she, all my friends at the time said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. I'm like, I don't see that in her. And the peer pressure got to me. And the relationship didn't last long because they kept, pressuring, just saying, you need to stop, don't do this to yourself. All of this X, Y, Z. Now, she did cheat on me too. Let me make that clear. She did cheat. And that does not still give me the right to what I said to her either. And that's probably a whole nother topic.
I'm just adjusting my seat because
once I found out, once I saw what she did,
Oh, I do remember this.
I think I said every book in the name.
We're naming the book.
Yeah. Wait, I'm sorry, y'all.
Every book in the name.
He got nervous again.
Yeah.
That's right. Just thinking about it, like, man, I did that.
I did not think about every.
Every book in the name.
There's this ongoing thing at my church, y'all, because apparently I get all this stuff wrong, these phrases. I'm sorry, I think I said every name in the book.
Come and take some ass and get some names.
I'm sorry. Y'all might hear more of that, I think I said every name of the book to her. And I did it in front of everybody.
Mm. Dirty scout.
Yeah. And
I mean, you got to bear it. If I tell everybody in the show, hey, Lavelle got to bear it, that is what it is, right? Because now I'm getting kind of insensitive to the story.
Well, but I was raised better than that, and I knew how to trigger her, and I knew what I could say to continue to devalue what she probably had already believed, because I think at one point she just embraced it, even though she hated it from what I'm thinking, what I'm realizing, and then it came from me. And I think there are certain people in certain people's lives where it just hits different
Yeah.
when it comes.
Well, for me, my challenge in that is, I think that given that you had a level of faith in her to be different,
Yes.
that she didn't hold up her end of the agreement.
She did.
And now the perception has gone further. Now, with that, we're not condoning any.
Absolutely not.
But, and I feel like she lost even more of her value by doing it to someone that supported her.
And
So who was really devalued? You or her?
I mean, I would probably say both,
It could be.
but I knew for me, just because of my upbringing and my roots and my principles, I knew I was wrong. So even though I was still hurting that I got cheated on, I was hurting more because I degraded a woman in front of everybody. And I knew I should have never did that. Especially because I had praised women my whole life. I knew I shouldn't have done that. Now, years later, she came to my mother's funeral. And 4 days after my mother's funeral, she apologized and XYZ, and we both apologized to each other. And, I told her, I said, I should have never did any of that to you. And you are not anything that they said to you. And I want you to know that. You are a woman that was made in the image of God. And I can't take back what I said, but trust me, what I can do now is apologize. And know from now on that I got your back, whatever it is.
That's big.
That is.
And,
That's big.
That's
she
how
apologized too. So
And I applaud you because because that's just, and then I think you said this before about spiritual maturity. It's just hard for me to be that man, and I just want to be transparent in that and applaud you and give you your kudos for that, because that's bigger than how I would have felt.
I got a question for you. In that moment, in retrospect, do you feel like you devalued yourself by almost, where people say, stooping down to the level of the people that are around you?
I thought about that a lot, but no, because I didn't. I'm not gonna say I didn't want to accept that part, but I didn't see that in her. I didn't see that aspect of what everybody else said. And just because she might have did that with everybody else, don't mean she was gonna do that with me. And I didn't see that. I saw this light that beamed from her, and I was like, I was attracted to that light. It wasn't the booty, it wasn't anything else. It was
Box.
It wasn't the box. It wasn't, because I waited until I got married for the box, so it wasn't that attracted me to it. So,
And what you're hitting on, and why I brought that up, it kind of went somewhere else, but I'm glad you said it the way you said it, is that, especially for younger people to look at, you got to form your own opinion about people and not go with everything else. Because of how you treat somebody, they can treat you completely different from the rest of the outside world. So you could honestly see a side of somebody that nobody else ever sees, based off of how you treat them.
If given the opportunity.
If given an opportunity.
And I think she did open herself up a little bit more to
Yeah, she
me
opened
versus
herself
others.
up.
Why you gotta be like that?
I'm sorry.
I think she did open herself up to me in a different way versus than she did to others.
Did she?
Y'all see what we gotta deal with, okay?
But back to the series. No, before we get killed by the producer. That's something that people really need to look at, because you made yourself available in a different way
Yeah.
than how everybody else was probably coming at her, which made you see, a different side of people. And that happens more times than not. You always have to form your own relationship and your own opinion of people. Not off of what you said, always listening to, this could happen. This isn't out of the realm of possibilities. But until I see you start going down that path with me, or until you do it, I got to form my own opinion of what's going on. I think the problem today is that people are forming their opinions of things and people off of what somebody else said.
Yeah.
Almost one of those things. Not doing your own research.
Forming their opinions off superficiality.
Yes.
Media has done that for us.
And I think that goes back to why it triggered me so much when I got pulled over by the police officer, because he immediately, without hesitation, didn't even think of me as a person, but just immediately, probably what he was trained or raised upon of racism and hating blacks and all of this stuff, and simple as that. So I think that's
Cultural bias training needs to be a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Freddie J, round us out.
Ah, man. Yeah, I've devalued a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I want to say, but in my head I keep hearing something.
If it ain't God, you should say it.
No, I just feel, again, I always say that for every action there's a reaction. But even I was making a joke about the bill. I was like, singing the flower, two wrongs don't make it right. And I'm
Younger generation, 5 Heartbeats, if you haven't seen it.
yeah. But I that doesn't make it okay. So to answer the question, I have, in the sense of, I've had a lot of ships. Every ship that I had, I would honestly say that I was naturally, I was really looking for, I wanted it to be the relationship. But due to my own personal hurt and just residue, somebody could do something and it wouldn't even major. It just flared me up, and it was just like, I'm going to shut off on this one. And I literally I was the cutoff king. It was just like, no more text, no more phone calls.
You know how I feel about that.
Yeah, and and that didn't make it right. So I've definitely devalued the ships.
Is that when you say being a cutoff? Is that just because you said some things that weren't serious or trivial? But I'm also a believer in your no, being your no, and having something. Ultimately, with love, there's something. Nothing with love is non-negotiable. People say they have non-negotiable, but when you really rock with somebody, it's like, I'll push that to the back, see what happens. So like, when you say, is that you devaluing the person?
I gotta respectfully disagree on that, but continue on.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna get there. Cause, yeah, when you say like, is that devaluing them, or is that just like, I don't like that, and that is not something I'm willing to deal with long term. So now I'm good.
So
I think that's okay.
So for me, what it has always been in those ships was that young lady had a expectation of me, And then I would express my expectation.
Mm-hmm.
But in my thinking, it was always the way that she may have been coming at me. But it was always like for me, my opinion was that when I'm expressing what I don't like, or that I have an issue with, that's being more devalued, from her, like, 'cause she's driving home what she wants, what her expectation is, and it's like, are you not thinking about what I said though? And so for me, that became the reason that I shut down. And it was like, oh, I'm done, I'm cool. And how I did it was, it wasn't like I told them in their face. Like they spent the night or something, and then after they spent the night,
Then I was shut down.
Yeah, I let them go home. It was like, I ain't calling no more. I ain't texting. And that doesn't make it right. And I've always those times that I had done that in the past, I've definitely regretted that. But then there's been times where I've had the opportunity where I come across them, you know what I'm saying, and I've made right on that, I wanted to go more deeper, but I'm just not ready to.
As long as you're not ready, otherwise I
Yeah.
would say fire it off.
Yeah, like I think I'm gonna say this though, and I'll leave it at that. The biggest time that I devalue someone was in a relationship. That's crazy. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah, you should.
I let her get away. And I thought what I was doing was the right thing.
Yeah, that's
Because I was being, I was trying to be selfless instead of selfish.
So you're valuable enough, and I value enough to be selfish and a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I let it get away. And because of that, I never knew how to come back from it. I didn't know how to. I just didn't know how to. I didn't know how to get back to it. And I thought I tried, but in hindsight, at 42 now, I'm like.
Something about that
Yeah.
hits real deep.
Yeah,
Because usually men don't express.
Yeah, I mean, reality is when you, as a man, if you're a real man, that's just my opinion. I'm not trying to down the other man, and hopefully the other men that are watching, they can put that in retrospect for themselves. When you really take a step back, I'm at 42 and I'm single. I don't have any children. I'm not married. That's a lonely feeling when you go home by yourself at this age.
Especially if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Because not everybody wants that.
And I'm glad you said that to make that clear. Like,
yeah.
My number one goal in life is always I wanted to be married. I wanted to have a family. In general, and I know people may not like this, but I don't care. I literally wanted the Cosby life. Like, that's what I
The Cosby Show, just for clarity.
Yeah, not. Let me get that right. Yeah, I wanted the Cosby Show. Not all the kids, per se. Let's God did that.
Say you wanted the Huxtables.
There you go.
Yeah,
Thank you, Stephon. I wanted the Huxtables.
I hated the Huxtables.
And so, even in asking that question, I think that's why I was sitting here like I really had nothing to say. Like when Stephon and LaVille went, because I was really sitting here because like Steph, I'm being politically correct. So what I just said, I'll let you cipher what I'm talking about, and I'll leave it at that.
I know what you're talking about.
I feel like you've been getting off the hook. You've been asking.
Oh no, I'm sharing. I'm sharing on this part. I kind of want. Because I wasn't gonna answer this question based on just make sure we keep on pace. Because the first thing that I thought about was like, oh, in a relationship is when I have to value people, but it's deeper than that. Since I've had more of an opportunity to sit with it, I devalue God. There's no way growing up how I did in the circumstances that I was in that I should be here. And God strategically placed people in my life to get me to this point. And in my mind, from the time I was 7 until I was about probably 20, 25, I made all that happen. I was strong enough to get myself out of these situations. I had the wherewithal. I had the plan when I was 7 to remove myself from the situation I was in and using education as a vessel for that and making friends with people that I formed brotherhoods with. These are people that I didn't have to meet. This isn't the intellectual property that I just had. It was given to me. And those people were strategically placed in my life. And it's much deeper than devaluing relationships. That's something that I can like sit back and like, but at a very deep, on a deeper level, I devalue God and my relationship with Him and not giving Him enough credit for the child that I was, being the man that I've become, and also acknowledging that I still have a lot of growing to do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey!
Who's expecting him to say that?
You're right. Hey, that show wasn't. And I known him for a long time.
Y'all, come on now. That's a testimony for some of y'all out there too.
Yeah. But you know what though?
That's one for everybody.
I'm gonna be honest though.
I like the fact, and I'm not trying to blow it up. I like the fact that you, even when you said that stuff, and I like the fact that Kev was the one to say that. Because in all honesty, if I'm just calling a spade, 9 times out of 10 people who will watch this podcast, they would assume that I would say that or LaVille would say that.
And the guy was just about to talk shit.
And right, and this is what's crazy though. This is what's crazy, and I'm not saying that about LaVille. I'm putting myself out there. It makes me. I appreciate you saying that because. I appreciate you saying that only because the upbringing that I have in church and in God, it astonishes me or it blows my mind, or naturally, it's baffling to me that I didn't say that. I thought on the surface level. I bypassed God, which is the biggest thing, because reality would be is on the surface level when I devalued these ships that I had that I shouldn't have had, right? It reflects ultimately back that I devalued God, that I didn't respect Him, because all these ships that I had, I shouldn't have had. I should be in the position that you had. Oh, I didn't get the box till I was married. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be high and mighty. I'm simply saying, as a personal correction, I'm glad that my friend and my brother, whom I've known for years now, who nobody would expect him to say that. But the reality is that Kev is a PK. So it's not like he does not have the wherewithal. He has a relationship with God, and he also knows church.
And I want to clarify that too.
You get what I'm saying?
I have a relationship with God,
Yeah.
but just don't like the church as a social construct and as an institution.
Here's
That's what it is for me.
So,
here's the
I'm
problem.
just showing appreciation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
But see, here's the problem, and because I've done it before, here's the problem with males and why me and you had a conversation. The more people like you have to be visible in church the way that you are, is because for me, I've even been shocked when some of the hardest criminals, hardcore criminals I know, can quote scripture better than anybody I've seen in church. But when you look at the outer persona and the stereotype, there's no way that, like Fred was saying, even I joked about it on the other pod, minister side, because we sit in the same spots every week. That's the church side.
Right.
But the profound statement came from here, and even jokingly out of his mouth what he said. I think we got to break that stereotype down of kind of what we talked about before, what we perceive somebody as before they open their mouth.
Yeah.
And I kind of hear you saying the PK almost don't have as much to do with it as just how I evolved.
Yeah, because I mean,
myself.
because full transparency, and one more thing to say about the full transparency. The only reason I don't identify with the PK notion, because my father, we have a great relationship now, isn't the person that was responsible for my upbringing. You know what I'm saying? So like when I hear preacher's kid, I'm like, that you were in that household, that's who you're raised by. I don't identify with that. You know what I'm saying? For me, and this goes back to what you're saying, because I don't necessarily look at it like that's the pastoral side of the table, because I think everybody has a purpose and passion in ministry. It just looks different.
Mm-hmm.
So the same way that you can say like, oh, Lavelle, Fred is a pastor, you could say Stefan's a pastor, or you're called to tell people and to do something. Yep, spit right there. Too much water. Had the Al Pacino mouth, dry spit. So I that's how I look at that too. Lavelle, did you? I can't even remember. See, I went on a rant and tangent. Nobody told me. Did you round that question off, or did you have something else to say about that?
No, I don't have nothing else to say about it.
Okay.
I had mentioned that I had respectfully disagreed about your non-negotiable thing, but that's for a whole other time.
Oh yeah. Our amazing producer can add that to our list of things. So things that are non-negotiable in ships. You want to hold on to
Did we
that?
cover that before?
We
Lightly.
we lightly,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
but if you want to tie it into the value, things are non-negotiable in relationships depending on the value you give the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Because the value you give the other person can change your non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a non-negotiable for A, but when C come around,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make mention, man, because I know we got to wrap it up. Thank you, James Smooth. Stefan, I've been preaching tonight. You notice that?
Yeah, the person that claims he's not a preacher, and that's that side of the table.
I just think it's impossible to be, be connected to a wife that's a pastor, and then that oil, that juice, that oil just don't. You know what I'm saying? That's just me. I don't know. But you drop. I mean, everybody, of course, but you drop some. I mean, you drop some golden nuggets tonight.
well, no scripture involved.
That's all right.
Mixtape
Right,
coming
a little
soon.
bit in there.
Y'all have a great night.
All right, then.
And
See y'all soon.
Wait, and also we
Don't
wanna
you plug
just,
nothing
no,
else.
we just want to do share because we brought it up about suicide. If any of you are
Please,
thinking
please.
of anything like that, we are as men here. Please reach out to somebody. Call the National Suicide Hotline.
988.
Or,
You'll see it at the bottom.
you'll see it at the bottom of our screen. Call the suicide hotline. If you can't do that, just try to talk to somebody. Okay, it is a reason why there is a community of people. Okay, talk to somebody. God bless y'all. We love y'all.
Peace.